Hi there, Mike Gehring again, back with you today to talk to you about value. We're going to talk about this one before we talk about money. I'm kind of switching up the order in which we do these things because if you don't understand value, then the point on money will get lost. So we're going to talk about value and what it means, what its use, how it affects our decision-making process. That's what we're going to talk about. I don't have a lot of notes on this one either, so I'm just as interested as you are in seeing where it goes. But this particular point is you don't know what value is, so you don't have anything of value. Value is the importance, worth, or usefulness of an item. Importance, use, usefulness. Importance, worth, usefulness of an item. And there are two types, there are four basic types of value. There's intrinsic and extrinsic value, there's real and perceived value, and we'll get into all of those things. To just kind of clarify the point of this concept, the point of this concept is that everything has a value. If you've ever watched, there's a show on television about guys who go buy junk from people who keep junk, and they pay ridiculous amounts of money for junk because they believe that junk has some perceived value to people who are mostly sentimental. And that may be true. They probably make some decent money doing that. But when you understand the importance, worth, or usefulness of an item, then you can pursue items that have intrinsic value instead of extrinsic value, real value instead of perceived value. And when you understand the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic value and real and perceived value, then you'll acquire those items at a better price without spending all your money on them. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in this video. And value is such a major concept in our culture, in our society, in economics, in business, in relationships, that you really need to put a lot of weight on understanding it. A lot of people are just like, value, I understand value, I understand all about value. That's why I have all the things that I have, because they had value to me. But the truth is that there is most of the value that we pay for as a culture in our economy, it comes from its extrinsic value. It's not real value. The same car two different cars might get you from point A to point V, which is the usefulness of a car. But this car costs $50,000 and this car costs $100. Okay, my first car was a Pontiac Phoenix. It's actually it was a Pontiac Phoenix. It looked like it had died in flames. We used to call it a Pontiac Molotov because it had a red rag for a gas cap, and if you just lit it and drove down the street, So, but if you understand that value, most of the value that you're paying for is extrinsic. If you don't believe that, go to a car lot and look at the price tags, sticker tags on those cars, and then go down to the junkyard and look at the intrinsic value that they place on them at the junkyard. You can get a whole car at a junkyard for maybe $175. That same car, when its usefulness is slightly higher, will sell for hundreds of times more. So let's say you wanted to get your transmission fixed. Okay, and you're going to take it in because you have to have a transmission, otherwise the car is basically useless. Then you go down to the transmission shop and they say, well, we can get you a new transmission for $10,000, seems like, or we can get you refurbished. I love that word, refurbished. It's used. Okay, we get you used transmission that we inspected and maybe replaced a few parts on for slightly less than $10,000. And you can go down to the junkyard and unscrew a few bolts off of a transmission on the same exact car, and it's not refurbished, but it's just as used, and take it to them and be like, here, just put this one on, and if there's anything wrong with it, fix it. Then you have a refurbished transmission for much less money. When you realize that most of the value is extrinsic, then you can make better business decisions, better life decisions. If you see a hot chick at a bar, she might have a lot of perceived value. Okay, maybe because you got your beer goggles on. She might have a lot of extrinsic value. She might be very beautiful. She might be dressed in just the appropriate type of garment for the meat market. But then you get her home, and she turns out to be a real piece of work. She doesn't have the intrinsic value that makes her extrinsic value worth pursuing. I say that because I'm a guy, and it works the same for guys or gals. It doesn't matter. Girls, you go up to a guy at a bar, and he's gorgeous. Oh my gosh. And then you find out, he's 35 years old. He doesn't have a job. He lives with his parents. He's not paying his child support. But he's got massive pectoral muscles and a great butt. So that lots of extrinsic value, no intrinsic value. And so when you understand value and how it's applicable to nearly every situation that you find yourself in, life is a series of transactions. It's a series of exchanges. Exchange is, as one man said, Ed Cole said, the process of life. And there has to be balance in that exchange. What you give up for something should be what you receive in that something. The importance, worth, or usefulness of an item, that value of that item should be worth what you're paying for it. And if it's not, then you're overpaying and you're wasting a lot of your money. They'll tell you that as soon as you drive a new car off the car lot, a lot of them lose 40% of their value because that value was extrinsic. And as soon as you purchased it, you paid for it, you paid for that value, then it disappeared just like that. I bought a house a few years back. It had very little perceived value. It had very little intrinsic value because it had no power, no water, no sewer, no septic, no gas, no toilet. The toilet was in the living room. It had all the plumbing was shot. The whole house was shot. It was worthless. Because the power had been shut off and the power wasn't up to code, you couldn't even get electricity to begin work. And so I picked up a half an acre in the good side of town in Fort Wayne for $7,500. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, you got a great house in a great neighborhood for $7,500. That great house in that great neighborhood was a real piece of work when I bought it. It had very little intrinsic value when I bought it. But I knew before I bought it, I did the research on it and made sure that I could get it put on city sewer. And the whole value of the property changed once you had the ability to have a bowel movement there appropriately. So but I found out that the perceived value was higher than or was lower than the intrinsic value because I could get city sewer if I paid for it. So value is the quintessential element in all good decisions. When you understand value properly, then you can make better decisions. Instead of buying a $100,000 car that's going to be worth 60 seconds after you sign the paperwork, you can make appropriate decisions and get, if you're strapped on cash, which most people are these days, and your transmission goes out, you can go down to the junkyard, unscrew a few bolts, or pay somebody who's handy to go down to the junkyard and unscrew a few bolts, and have something that has high value at the transmission store for much less money than you would have paid for it at the transmission store. So there's markets, and this is where the appropriate use of value comes from. When you go to a dealership to buy a car, you are paying retail price for that car. When they got the car, they did not pay retail price for it. They bought it in an entirely different market than you can buy it in. They bought it probably at the auction. And at the auction, they literally sell very expensive, high perceived value items for pennies on the dollar uh, because they can, because that's what the market value is there at the auction. And if you could get into that auction, then you could get the same kind of value for much less money. So when you understand that most value is extrinsic, not intrinsic, most value is perceived and not real, then you have a good understanding of how to play the game. Which market do you want to buy a car in? Would you rather buy one at auction? Or would you rather pay retail price at a dealership? Would you rather buy stocks when their value is close to what their intrinsic value is? Or would you rather pay an inflated price for those stocks because it just made the headlines in the news and has a high perceived value right now? When you understand that value is extrinsic or perceived instead of real or intrinsic, then you can look for deals where the price that you pay for it is closer to the real value instead of the perceived value, or the intrinsic value instead of the extrinsic value. So when you start spending your money on essentially what I'm saying is you want to stay on the real side, on the intrinsic side of value, and not get carried away with all the rest of the people who are paying for extrinsic value or perceived value. And yet the reverse is also true. In business, you want to create a higher perceived value and a higher extrinsic value. You want to sell your services instead of just your product, so that you create a perceived value, a higher value, and you can differentiate yourself. Because business, when it gets busy in the summertime, I know that sounds crazy, and customers want to pay you money. And you're saying, answer the phone. Yeah, all I have to do is answer. People don't, and that gives perceived value for our services because we're answering the phones, and most people aren't. It's really tough to get a quote for tree service business in our market in the summertime when everybody's busy, because the competition for tree service in our area, you don't have to be licensed to do it. So anybody who can cut down trees can do trees here, and so we're all competing on a very narrow margin. So if we answer the phones, we're probably going to get the jobs because everybody else is going to take 2 or 3 weeks to get back to them. And in some markets, if you understand that difference between intrinsic and extrinsic value, you can create out of nothing an image. One of the most powerful things you can do in life is create an image. Matter of fact, and this is a great point, all actors and actresses, they sell the same face that other people have. Okay, they just give it a higher perceived value, a higher extrinsic value because of what's associated with it, the glamour and the fame and the stuff. It's not that nobody else on the planet looks like them. It's not that they have a different value than the guy that looks just like them. It's that they have a higher perceived and extrinsic value because of what? Because they sold it, because they created that image. So it doesn't matter what market you're in, whether you're in the market for a relationship, or you're in the market for a business, or you're in the market for stocks or bonds, or you're in the market for you're trying to figure out the difference between going down to Rent-A-Center and getting a 60-inch TV from Rent-A-Center, or I don't know if I can say I can say Rent-A-Center, or the things I think crack me up. Or whether you should go down to the store and buy the same 60-inch. That if you go down to any store, they're going to tell you the value of this the perceived value of this TV is high. It's crazy high. This is a 60-inch HD. Oh my gosh, you're going to be the envy of all your friends, and the Super Bowl is going to look fantastic on it. And oh my goodness. What is the importance of a TV? What is the usefulness of a TV? That determines the worth of a TV. If the stock market crashes and the economy tanks and everybody's looking for work and they can't pay their cable bill, what's the real value of a TV? And here again, we get into another point where the value of an item is based on the market value, but the market value is based on the values that we hold intrinsically in ourselves. Okay? I don't have a lot of usefulness for laying around on the couch all day and watching soap operas. I don't have place a lot of importance on my ability to unwind. Well, I need to unwind. I have a stressful job. I need to unwind at the end of the day. You don't have as much of a stressful life as some guy who's starving to death in some third world country or fighting for survival in some other country. You don't you don't have stress to really talk about, really, and yet you're placing a lot of importance on the value of a television. If that television makes you money, if you're charging money to, I don't even know, if you have a coffee shop and you put a TV in a coffee shop and it gets people to sit there and drink more coffee, then that's worth it. Okay, but the importance of a television is based on the importance that we place on these items, and we hold on those activities ourselves. If you're trying to get a really hot chick, maybe having a fancy car is important to getting the hot chick that you want. But once you have the hot chick, unless keeping her is also important, and she requires a fancy car to be kept, then it loses its importance pretty fast. So my point is, you've got to not only understand the difference between real and perceived value and intrinsic and extrinsic value, and try to stay on the real intrinsic side of things for products and services and relationships, but also keep an accurate value and importance on the activities that require those things, so that you place the proper weight on those items. And I'm way over time. In the next video, we're going to talk about money. You don't know what money is for, so you don't use it properly. Money is not for spending. It's not for spending. We do spend it, but it's not for spending. And we're going to talk about that in the next video. Again, my name is Mike Gehring. I hope you enjoyed these videos. I hope you get a lot out of it. And I'll see you on the next one.